we're good.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another amazing webinar presented by the Phia Group, where we help empower your plans. Today is a very special webinar. We are doing this on behalf of MASSA-WHO. And you're like, MASSA what? Yes, MASSA-WHO.
MASSA-U?
MASSA-U, Ron, that's right. It's Massachusetts Association of Health Underwriters, which I have the privilege of serving on their board of directors, which I think is pretty funny, Ron, because I'm not even a broker, yet I'm on the board of advisors for basically a broker association.
Well, you are an advisor, Adam. You're in the business of educating and helping people advance their interests.
So I'm making brokers into superheroes. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, you're the father of all superheroes.
That's even better. I'm going to tell that to my daughter. Anyways, today we have a very special webinar. It is Evolve or Dissolve, responding to today's tax law to save the health benefit plan industry tomorrow. It's a mouthful, but basically we're going to talk about Trump Care and what's going on, how it affects all types of plans, self-funded plans, fully insured plans, Obamacare plans, exchange plans, whatever it might be. We've had a bunch of questions about the individual mandate, whatever it might be. We're going to go over it all today with my co-hosts and friends. First, Brady Bizarro. Say hello, Brady.
Hello, Brady.
And as always, Ron E. Peck, Esquire. Say hello, Ron.
The one and only hello, Ron.
Just so you know, we have a special guest. We're not going to allow her to talk, but it is Kate Bardsley. She's the executive director at MASSA-WHO. Want to make sure we welcome her. Welcome, Kate. And Kate is very lucky because she gets to be in our studio audience, where very select few people get to be. I mean, because right now she actually knows what we're wearing, Ron.
Yeah, I showered for today.
We actually had. I mean, you have Brady with the tie on, and Ron is dressed
whatever was in the closet.
Not as bad as typically dressed. So that's good. I mean, we're doing
green at home.
We're doing much better. Today's agenda, folks, for the many of you who has joined us, folks, this was open not only to members of MASSA-WHO and not only welcome to people in Massachusetts, but across the country. So we thank the many of you who have joined us today. We're going to talk about problem, purpose, process. We will discuss the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, also known as TCJA. We're going to talk about the bill, how the bill eliminates the individual mandate. I get a lot of questions about, do we think the individual mandate should have been eliminated? Will it benefit self-funding? Our answer is no. It's not going to help self-funding. We're going to talk about why. The impact on employer-sponsored insurance, not the typical Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna plans, but employer-sponsored plans. What the state responses were, and then we're going to talk about putting the benefit back into benefit plans. What you can do as a broker, as an advisor, as an administrator, as a plan themselves, what you can do to actually help or change or revise your plan design based on the fine words that Brady's going to share with us today. Last but not least, we're going to sprinkle a little bit of cost containment today in regards to what we're discussing. So what is the problem that we're seeing across the country? Healthcare costs too much. Prices keep going up. And due to that, what happens? Employers like myself, actually not me, Ron. I would never do this to my employees. You know that.
Yeah, no.
But most employers, the bad employers, right? All the other places where you guys could work, what do? They're forced to offset costs through higher copays and deductibles onto their employees. What is our purpose here? To make this affordable for everybody involved. Why? Because you, hardworking Americans, deserve amazing access to high-quality, affordable health care. How do we do it? Very simple. Empower the plan. Create, manage, customize, and take control of your plan design. Help maximize benefits, minimize costs by promoting self-funding, putting cost containment services, and custom solutions for you and your clients. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Brady. Brady, take it away.
Thanks, Adam. So here we are again, another tax webinar. And this one is going to be about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. I'm not sure the acronym has caught on so far, but TCJA doesn't look good. So we'll just call it the tax bill for now. And that's fine because it really is the first tax bill since 1986. It's been 30 years, so there shouldn't be any confusion as to which one we're talking about. But so it was signed into law in late December of last year. And so let's talk about some of the major elements of what you can find in this tax bill. So obviously this webinar is not going to be about the whole entire tax bill, but here's some of the highlights that we think are worth mentioning. It reduces the rates for businesses, which is a good thing, and is going to be for good, and for individuals through 2025. The reason for that is because of some budgetary magic they had to work through, but the thinking is that Congress will extend those individual tax cuts at a later date to make them permanent for us as well. The deductions have been increased for the standard deduction and for family tax credits. Personal exemptions have been eliminated. So kind of streamlining the process of filing your returns. They want you to, I think at one point the president said he wanted you to file on a postage note or on a 3x5 index card. Not quite that simple, but a lot better. Put some limits on deductions for state and local income taxes. That's caused a bit of a flurry in recent months if you've been watching the news. Also a cap on the property taxes you can deduct for your primary residence. It gets rid or curbs the impact of the alternative minimum tax or the AMT, expands the healthcare deduction temporarily for a year or two. And then of course the bombshell, which is why we're all here today to talk, is that it effectively eliminates the individual mandate of the Affordable Care Act. So it's important for us to say, and when you're speaking about what's going on with this bill generally, not to say that it repeals the individual mandate, because it doesn't actually do that. We'll explain the difference. It's a slight difference, but it's important. We'll talk about it in a few slides, but it's more proper to say that it eliminates the mandate, and you'll see why in a few slides. So just quickly, I'm not going to go through all the numbers here, but I wanted to give you just a slide here that shows you some of the changes. Pretty much everyone's getting a tax break here, some getting more than others. But you can see at the bottom there, I mentioned again, sort of all the little bonuses that you find in this bill. Deductions are increased, tax credits are increased, all generally good things. And we wanted to point that out to you there. So for businesses, also important, a little more complicated, but the thing to know here is that obviously we heard about the corporate tax rate being reduced from 35% to 21%. That's a significant drop. They also eliminated the corporate alternative minimum tax or the corporate AMT. I think President Trump has also mentioned that he's going to allow repatriation of tax profits overseas. All good things for the economy, all big boosts for businesses. But for most of our clients and for most of us in the industry who may not be organized like a corporation and may instead be organized like an LLC or a partnership or an S Corp, you get a break by a 20% deduction, after which a lower rate of 29.6% is applied. Basically, the thinking there is you've got to compete with the corporate tax rate of a drop of 14%. So they're adding in this 20% deduction for LLCs and partnerships. Now, there are some limitations, which we're not going to get into here, and some restrictions. But in general, that's going to be something that a lot of employers will be able to take advantage of in the next tax year. So, sorry, I went ahead there. I want to just talk quickly about the impact on our industry and just make the point that many of our clients and people in our industry are not these massive companies, and they weren't really paying, or these massive companies rather were paying a high tax rate of 35%. In this case, I think for the industry as a whole, it'll be good to utilize the tax breaks that we get in our industry. So the mandate, we talked about this being the bombshell. And it is a bombshell. And just to go back quickly as a refresher as to what the mandate is, when it was imposed, and what the big deal is, you'll recall the massive court case, 2012, the one that upheld basically the individual mandate as being constitutional, pretty much the heart of Obamacare. And the thinking there was that it was a tax, right? And Congress can impose the individual mandate as a tax under its taxing power, and that's sort of enshrined in Section 5000A of the ACA, which lays out the requirement for people to have coverage, and it notes the penalty. It's still $695 per person, or 2.5% of family income, whichever is greater.
Hey, Brady, I think it's important also to remember, and this was actually something that came up back when this case was decided. Originally, they were trying to eliminate the entire ACA, so the entirety of Obamacare. And the argument was, because there was no severability clause, if this particular part, the individual mandate, was deemed to be unconstitutional, then the entire law would be unconstitutional because you couldn't carve it out and remove it. Basically, it was either you took the law as written as a whole or not at all. And when this case came out and they said that the provision, the section of the law was constitutional, but that it was in fact a tax, in essence, they kind of had their cake and ate it too and sort of rode the fence, where they were saying that we could actually pull the teeth partially out of this individual mandate without deeming it to be unconstitutional. And it's funny because I think by making it into a tax rather than a mandate, even though we call it an individual mandate, little did we know that years later it was going to end up coming up in a budget and a tax reform law, because as a tax they can reform it. And now, in essence, instead of killing the tiger, they've just declawed it.
And it's actually very clever, Ron, as you said, and it's a bit of foreshadowing, because we'll talk about a a little later on of how the states are now, or some states are challenging the actual constitutionality of the entire act itself now because of the fact that it was upheld under the taxing power. So we'll get to that in a few slides. But so why is the mandate so popular to go after? It really was the low-hanging fruit for this administration. All of last year, you saw many attempts that failed of repeal and replace and repeal and repair, repeal and delay, all these mantras that didn't really work. Nothing really happened, and this tax bill was the last sort of effort that the Republicans could make to claim some kind of victory on health care, because the mandate is the least popular part of Obamacare. People don't like being told that they had to buy insurance, and conveniently for Republicans, it saved them a lot of money in the budget over the next 10 years, and it let them really comply with what's called the Byrd Rule in the Senate. And I won't bore everyone with all the details of the Byrd Rule, but just know that repealing legislation in the Senate requires 60 votes, and Republicans don't have that. In fact, they can hardly even get 51 votes that they need to do things as of last year. So essentially, despite the president's tweet, which says that this ended Obamacare, it didn't end Obamacare. It just zeroed out the penalties of the mandate. Now, why is that so important? So the mandate, recall, was really the glue holding the entire thing together. It solved two problems that the ACA created, which was the problem of free riders and the problem of a death spiral, where you had people basically who were already sick, who wanted to get covered, and who would cost so much money that you needed to bring in the younger, healthier, low-risk lives into the risk pool to be able to offset the cost of people who already had conditions that were expensive. And so if you didn't do this, you'd have a situation which policy experts call the death spiral, where basically over time, if you allow people to drop out of the insurance pool who are healthy and don't need coverage, the young invincibles, as they were called, then all you're going to have really is a risk pool that is full of sick people, that's too expensive to insure, and that it just sort of gets out of control. The problem gets worse and worse. And so the individual mandate was designed to solve those two problems. Now, according to the Congressional Budget Office, they estimate that by effectively eliminating the mandate, you're going to have 13 million fewer insured people by 2027, mostly because people will choose not to get coverage if they don't have to. They also predict that premiums in the marketplaces will rise by at least 10% in 2019. And on top of the amounts you've already seen premiums rise in the last few years, that's going to be a pretty big deal, and it's going to lead to a lot of instability in the individual marketplace. So just quickly, I want to talk about what exactly the bill does and does not do, because it's important to be clear with the words we're using, and I mentioned it before. And so the first thing to know is that this does not repeal the mandate. It just eliminates enforcement of it. Any of the amounts that the government would penalize you, would essentially tax you, are now being zeroed out. We talked about why they couldn't repeal the mandate. I'm sure if they could actually have repealed it, they would have. But it's important to note that because they didn't actually repeal it, there are certain parts of Section 5000A that are still kept in place, and they are important for other parts of the bill, like the tax credits. And so an example I used here is some of the definitions of things like minimum essential coverage, eligible employer-sponsored plans, or modified adjusted gross income. These are all terms that you probably heard before in other areas, and these terms are defined in that section of the law, and had it been completely repealed, then arguably it would have led to a host of other legal problems, because you'd have no definition of these terms, and what minimum essential coverage means would be up for interpretation. So that's sort of a silver lining in what happened here. So it does not repeal reporting requirements under a different section of the ACA, of the Internal Revenue Code, 6055. So essentially, even though you're not penalized for not having coverage, you still have to report your status to the IRS. And the employer mandate has not been touched, nor its penalties. So for 2018, you still have to have coverage. The individual mandate repeal actually goes in, or the elimination goes into effect in 2019, but you still have to report what your status is to the IRS, whether you have coverage or not. So it's a bit confusing there, because you have some requirements left in place, but on the whole, this is going to lead to about 13 million people not being covered in the next 10 years, and that's going to have some serious impacts. And to talk about those impacts, I'll turn it over to Ron.
Great, thank you. All right, so thanks for the setup there, Brady. So when you look at this, you know what's amazing? I think a lot of people, as you look at the dialogue regarding the individual mandate, enforcement, the rules, the laws, et cetera, I think a lot of people don't really appreciate what insurance is or how it even works. They don't understand the concept of risk pooling. their feeling is, well, if I'm healthy and I don't need insurance, I shouldn't have to buy it. But gosh, if I'm sick and I have all these expenses, then it should be there for me. They don't understand the money doesn't grow on trees. And that ultimately, the way we were going to cover the people who I call high-risk lives, people who have conditions, pre-existing conditions, which you can no longer exclude, all of these costs that these health plans and insurance are bearing, the money has to come from somewhere. And if you only charge the high-risk individuals what their claims cost plus some, why would they even have the insurance? Why wouldn't they just pay for it out of their pocket? So obviously, these low-risk lives, they add funds to the risk pool in order to offset the cost of the high-risk lives. So the issue is that if you're not going to force these low-risk lives to purchase insurance, and they don't see it as a good investment, they're going to ask, okay, then why should I join?
Well, Ron, great point there, but I know in a few slides we're going to talk about the actual expense for a single person here at Phia who's 28 years old. How much does it cost to actually purchase health insurance? I know we're going to talk about that in a few slides.
Right.
But here's what we've already seen. Most young people or most healthy people aren't even aware of this individual mandate change. They're not aware of it. But we have people here at our office who are aware of it. So don't forget, we have a very cheap yet robust health benefit plan. And we've had employees here at Phia, even though there is no deductible, there is no copay on most things. We've had employees who say, yeah, you know what, even though it's cheap and even though it covers everything, I'd rather have that $150 to buy beer or to buy a bottle of Crown Royal.
Sure.
Or whatever it is they do. So the reality is, if they're willing to do that on our plan, what is a 29-year-old person going to do on a typical plan that has a $4,000 deductible or $25 copays or $50 copays or $200 copays? They are going to drop their coverage.
Sure.
And as you mentioned, those are the people that you want on the plans, just like you wanted them on the exchanges, because they subsidize the sick people.
Correct.
That's the concern.
And I don't think people necessarily understand that without that low-risk life foundation, then the high-risk lives claims can't be paid. And another point I'd like to make, Adam, and I'm glad you bring it up, when you talk about the attitude in general, people think, well, you know what, this is just for the individual market. This is for people who can't get insurance through their employer. They were purchasing individual policies on the exchange. Now that they don't have to, they won't. But me, as either a broker advisor or a third-party administrator or an employer or a stop-loss carrier, MGU, whatever, I don't deal with those individuals. I deal with employers that offer group benefit plans. And if you're employed by an employer who offers a group plan, you're just going to stay on it because you don't know any better, which goes exactly to what you were saying, which is, A, you may be surprised by how many people actually know to ask to remove themselves. And the thing is, and it is so fascinating, when you look at the way people purchase auto insurance, you don't expect to have a car accident, and yet they say it's the thing you pay for that you hope you never use. And people will go out of their way to get it, but not use it. And then health insurance, amazingly, is the flip side, where you'd rather not pay for it because you assume if you ever have an expense, it'll be covered some other way.
Well, I didn't want to have to share this personal story, but I'm going to. So yesterday, I had to drive to Springfield, Massachusetts, which is the home of the Basketball Hall of Fame.
That's right.
And that's about it. I don't think there's anything. I mean, I know there might be people on this call from Western Mass. Please do not send us hate mail. We apologize, but, it's Springfield. Anyways, I was driving, and I was rear-ended in my truck. Now, this is the truck that literally I am trading in tonight. I'm trading the car in, or I was supposed to. Trade this nice car in for a new car. Well, now it has a major dent. Well, the first thing I did was, is the damage worth more than my deductible? That's the first thing I do. And the problem that you have in today's world is that most people don't know if the cost of their medical expense, whatever it is going to be more than their deductible. You just don't know that.
You don't?
And I was able to make, as a consumer, a decision to either file a claim. Remember, Carfax, the worst thing ever. It's only a bad thing if you actually want to trade a car in that had a car accident.
Oh, yeah, they got you now, huh?
They're offering me $2,000 less for my trade-in because now my car will be on Carfax. Mm-hmm. Even though I wasn't at fault, I'm still on Carfax. But the point is, I had, as a consumer, could make the decision. Do I file a claim? Yep, I'm going to have to. If it's $5,000 worth of damage, I have a $1,000 deductible. Or do I not file a claim? It's $1,500 worth of damage. I can get someone to fix it but it's worth not filing a claim because it's not going to be on my Carfax.
It's just so amazing how much thought goes into it with the auto insurance and health. You would think your own health is more important than your car, and yet we're completely divorced from that decision.
Exactly.
So hooray for pessimism, right? That's where we're headed with all this talk, is pessimism. Bottom line, folks, you need low-risk lives to add funds to your risk pool in order to pay for the high-risk lives. Unless you have one of those trees in your backyard that grows money, you need low-risk lives to fund the pool. But if you have low-risk lives who look at your plan and they see it as a bad investment, like Adam said, I'd rather spend the $150 going to the movies, they're not going to purchase insurance. They're going to pull out. And if you were relying on a mandate in order to force people to purchase it, well, that opportunity, that option is being taken away, which means, okay, I have to run through a mental exercise. I have to say either A, how am I going to cover the costs of the high-risk lives without the low-risk lives funding the pool? Or B, what can I do to keep the low-risk lives in the pool even if it's not required? Because you cannot rely on the law to force it any longer. You're going to have to take action on your own.
So wait, you mean to tell me that 2 to 3 million, the CBO is estimating 2 to 3 million less individuals have ER coverage? I mean, and that's the expensive stuff, right? Am I wrong about that, Ron?
Yeah, not wrong, Adam. So one of the, and people say again, well, you know what, I'm an employer. I think what I could do is, you know what, I'm going to hide the cost of the plan in with the other benefits, you know, your 401k, your PTO time, your salary, your bonus, you're welcome, your health insurance, on and on and on. It's a line item. And if I don't make a big deal of it, hopefully my employees won't even know to say, hey, is there an option to pull out of our plan? And if so, how much more would that make me? Awesome, great. This individual mandate removal, or rather the removal of the tax penalty, is not going to apply to me. And my group health plan, I'm just going to force everybody to stay on, or at least trick them into staying on. So this won't affect me, except, again, we're still on the glass half empty slides, right, Brady?
All right, yes.
Okay, continue the pessimism story. The carriers, the insurance carriers, especially the large carriers, they were banking on these low-risk lives. They were banking on the individual market to add funds to their overall risk pool. So what are they going to do when they lose these lives off the individual policies? Well, they got to make up the money somehow, so maybe they're going to increase the cost, the premium that they're charging their group policyholders, okay? For those employers who are still fully insured or partially fully insured, your rates may go up to subsidize now the lost revenue that they're losing from the low-risk lives who are purchasing individual policies from them. Another thing, if you're self-funded with an ASO, and that ASO is owned or managed by one of these carriers who's taking a hit in the individual market, maybe they'll increase their ASO fees in order to subsidize.
One other thing I think that we're missing here is just looking at the marketplace itself. So a few days ago, because I have nothing better to do than, watch the news, I guess, I flipped through what I watch. I never watch CNN. I watch either MSNBC or Fox News. I literally try to go the extremes.
The yin-yang.
Right, just to see, where both sides of the aisle are coming from. And one of the things I noticed when I was watching MSNBC was they had a gentleman on talking about skinny plans. And skinny plans, they were like, what's skinny plan? What's a skinny plan?
Like Weight Watchers, a plan to lose weight?
A skinny plan.
Nice, all right.
Skinny plans were created a few years back as a way to get around the ACA. There was a big story about it in the Wall Street Journal a few years ago. By the way, those of you on this, the hundreds of you that are listening to us, if you want, you can contact me via email, arusso@feedgroup.com. I'll send you the link over about that Wall Street Journal article. But it was basically talking about these skinny plans as being a way around a loophole around the ACA, which would cover just enough to get it compliant, but that's it. It's skinny, meaning you take basically a typical, if you want to look at it from a figurative way, you take a plan document that has 100 pages, and what a skinny plan is, you literally take a knife and you're carving out the fat. That's what you're doing. You're making it skinny. Because when we create skinny plans, you take out the stuff that's expensive, which is hospitalization. Take your scissors out, just cut it out of the plan design. That's what a skinny plan is. And this gentleman was out there talking about how these skinny plans are basically replacing and are now an option for these young people where they don't have the individual mandate. Now more and more brokers, so if you're a broker on the phone, this might be something that's interesting to you, are able to offer skinny plans to younger folk, healthy folk, who don't need all this care, but just want to have enough there for like the oil changes and so forth. and it's being priced at roughly half of what the bronze plans cost. What else are deductibles and copays, et cetera? But then I read that and I'm like, why would a healthy person want a skinny plan?
That's my point.
Wouldn't a healthy person want a catastrophic only plan?
That's exactly it.
Because it's no different than my car. If I had a skinny car insurance coverage, it would be covering my oil changes and my flat tires. I don't want that. I want it to cover my transmission going. And that's like your heart failure.
See, that's where I was confused, Adam, because when you were explaining skinny plans, the first thing I'm thinking is if I'm healthy, I don't really need insurance, but I know there's this mandate out there, I'm going to go get the cheapest policy I can get that still satisfies the rule. But now that there's no rule and skinny plans have no real value to me, why would I even buy it?
If you're a healthy young person, you're better off just going to urgent care and paying cash versus in case, knock on wood, you do get run over by an 18-wheeler, that's when you need coverage.
Catastrophic only. Exactly.
I'll let you get back to your slides.
No.
Kept in trouble.
I'm glad you bring that up because it's an excellent point, and it actually leads to the next point, which is that if the carrier is relying on things like skinny plans to subsidize, additional places you may feel the sting, stop loss, if your stop loss is tethered to these carriers. Another place it could be network fees, right? They could be increasing the fees on the network. So you can see how all of these things might potentially impact you as a group employer or self-funded benefit plan, even if you're not on the individual market. So that's a lot of negativity. I'd like to actually do a little optimism, if that's okay, guys. Yeah, I know. I'm not really used to this, so I'm going to give it my best shot. Optimism. Let me try to get it. Optimism. All right.
There we go.
How does, if you think about it, because I remember in the court case we talked about earlier, they talked about vegetables, right? You can't force me to buy vegetables, right? How do commercial sales even happen, right? Talking about your car, you had a truck, Adam. You could have had a less expensive car, right? Why do I have this nice pen instead of just a big ballpoint? You know, why am I drinking spring water instead of tap? None of this, there's no mandate, there's no individual mandate that I have to have this pen or have to have this water. Why do I choose to purchase these things? Why do I choose to invest in these things if I don't need them?
That suit?
Right, well, that's
that tie, that shirt you're wearing right now?
The point is, somehow, some way, they look at their target audience, the consumer they want to attract. They say, what do these people value? What can we give them that, at least in their mind, it's worth as much or more than we're asking by way of fee? But from our perspective, it costs less to provide them that good than they pay us, and therefore make a profit. And why you can't take that same mentality, Adam, that every single entity out there that's selling consumer goods right now that are not mandated by law, somehow they stay in business. Somehow they're making money. If you apply that same mentality to your health benefit plan, how can you take your plan and make it attractive to these low-risk lives so that they see it as something they want to buy, not that they're required to buy, but want to buy, and yet you, as the one who's providing this plan, just like Coca-Cola, just like the pen manufacturer, the soup manufacturer, it costs you less to provide it than you're taking in, finding that balance.
I mean, as an entrepreneur, I can tell you that, to me, there's a lot of opportunities that are very attractive, not only nationally, but here in Massachusetts. And I know with that, I know we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in this particular state as well. But I agree with you. I think, you can look at it two ways. I definitely think from a self-funded standpoint, losing the individual mandate hurts us for the reasons we've talked about previously. However, there is an optimistic view as well that there's new opportunity, but it's definitely a lot more work.
Absolutely.
The optimistic side,
no
you
doubt.
have a lot more work to do because people could just say, like they did here. I mean, I met with that employee. He goes, yeah, I just want that extra $150 in my pocket.
Sure. Well, Adam, and then I'll turn it over to Brady, but I look at it almost like the USPS, right? So the United States Postal Service. Back in the day, if you wanted to send a letter, you had to use the USPS. It was basically a mandate.
Right. I want to bring up a comment that one of our, feel free, folks, for those of you who aren't used to our webinars, you can always just type in a question, and if we see something that makes any sense or that just upsets us tremendously, we talk about it. So there was a comment that says, a vast majority of employers offered coverage before the mandate, and they will continue to do so regardless of whether or not legal mandate. That isn't the question. We agree with you on that. This is the individual mandate, not whether employers, we're still offering benefits, but our individual employee decided not to be covered. It's not the same. Your point is a great one, but it's not the point that we're discussing. We're talking about the individual's decision to not take the coverage that the employer is offering.
Right, exactly. And to your point, I think you're right that, these employers have always offered these plans, and somehow, some way they were able to afford to do so. And, the attitude is, well, for whatever reason, these healthy people who maybe didn't need insurance then understood the value of being part of the plan just in case in the future. But also remember that a lot of the opportunities to trim down the plan, trim what you cover, those have been taken away because the ACA still exists and it still does have additional benefits that have to be offered.
This person made another additional quote that said benefits are a differentiator in a competitive market. You are 100% correct.
Yes, sir.
We promote our amazing benefit plan. We're going to talk about our plan in a minute. We promote our plan to get people here instead of working somewhere else in Massachusetts. Trust me, we do. But that doesn't change the fact that this particular individual, 28 years old, single, healthy, said, I don't want health insurance. I don't need it. I'm not mandated. There's no penalty if I choose not to have it. I don't want it. And those are the people that we want on the plan. That's right. The point.
And I guess my final point before I turn to Brady is, again, when there was only one option to send a letter, you had to use it. Now that there are all these other options, the Postal Service has to get innovative or they're going to dissolve. And I think that our benefit plans, when you're relying on a mandate to force low-risk lives to fund your risk pool, it's easy to sit back and not innovate. But when that mandate is not there anymore, if you want to keep those lives on your plan, you're going to have to come up with an innovative way to deliver benefits and keep them attractive.
And speaking of who's not sitting back, states are also not sitting back. So if you thought that some of the states were going to just sort of take all this lying down and not have a response to what the administration is doing, you were mistaken. Because the truth is that states have a significant interest, probably even more so than employers do, in preserving the coverage mandates. Now, why is that? Well, for one thing, if you've heard at all about recent stories about Medicaid and the work requirements that certain states are considering and the cuts across the board, you know that Medicaid is really consuming state budgets. In our state of Massachusetts, 41%, the governor, Charlie Baker's had a lot of problems with exploding budgets and the cost of the Mass Health program going through the roof, and it's really eating into other discretionary spending. It's also the case in a big state like Texas, a red state, where it's 33% of their budget. So that's a big problem. And they also have an interest in showing low uninsured rates.
And real quick, I want to go over that point on Medicaid.
Sure.
The Medicaid budget is 41%, right, in Massachusetts?
Yeah.
And think about this. Medicaid reimbursement levels are the lowest of any reimbursement levels. To give you an idea, Medicaid reimburses less than Medicare.
Sure does.
And if you look at a private health plans are reimbursing 300% of Medicare, meaning 3 times more. That's why you're seeing private health insurance keep going up, the cost, because we're offsetting the low reimbursements of facilities with Medicaid. So what's amazing to me is, imagine if we actually reimbursed under Medicaid more money. What would that number be? It's 41% of the budget, and it's the lowest reimbursement of all reimbursement types available to any payer, which is amazing to me. Sorry, Brady.
No, it's fine. It'd be unsustainable if it was any higher. And really, like I said, the states are noticing more and more that they have to take action on it. The other reason why they want to see these mandates kept in place is because it looks good politically for the governors of these states to say, look, we have 2.8% uninsured, or Vermont, 3.8%. These are low. Iowa, 5%. These are low numbers. And if you get rid of the mandates, those numbers are going to go up, and you're going to have potentially some political challengers come in and say, hey, your state isn't doing so well on covering its people. And again, finally, the economy is stable with low unemployment. We've heard it all the time, and it's true. It's, I think, 4.1% now, or it's getting very, very low. And so you would expect that you'd have coverage really at 100%. But with the mandate being gone, states are fearful that their numbers will look bad. And so you have a number of states, including D.C., having their own proposals to implement their own mandates. And in fact, there already is one state, and this is a question I'm seeing a comment as I'm speaking, about our own state, Massachusetts, which does have its own individual mandate and had it originally going back to the days of Governor Mitt Romney, because unlike any other state, we were the sort of the breeding ground for the idea of the Affordable Care Act, and that's still kept in place. So people in our state who choose not to get covered by their employer, for example, would not have to pay a fine to the federal government, but they would have to pay a fine to the Mass Department of Revenue. So our state still has the mandate. There's no plans that I've heard to repeal it. In fact, other blue states around the nation are proposing bills, including Maryland, to sort of copy what we have in Massachusetts. And in fact, the Maryland proposal is actually very interesting because they want to use the penalty that you would pay for not having coverage as a down payment to get coverage. So pretty creative use of the fine there to basically get Maryland as high as it can in coverage rates. And any other state really with its own marketplace and income tax are also considering mandates. New Jersey, California, again, these are all blue states, and they're doing this because they need to take a number of steps to fix their budget and get more people covered through the private sector than are on the public sector. So those are the blue state responses, and I just actually updated the slide this morning and differentiated the responses by blue and red because as of yesterday, you had 20 states introduce or sign on to a complaint filed in the U.S. District Court in the Northern District of Texas, which is suing the federal government over Obamacare. And they're suing for the same reason that we mentioned before in 2012 when they sued over the constitutionality of the individual mandate. And the argument that they're making is actually, I think, a pretty good one. I haven't actually had a chance to read the whole complaint just yet, and I'm sure there'll be some responses. Actually, I know there'll be many responses to the complaint here, but they're saying that now, without having a tax penalty, the mandate is unconstitutional. You had the Supreme Court say in 2012 that Congress could not uphold the individual mandate under the Commerce Clause, but it could do so under the taxing clause, under the power to tax and spend. So because now it's not really a tax because there's no penalty, then the whole thing should go away. That's sort of what the argument is. And Ron mentioned earlier that there is no severability clause in the ACA here. So if this part is struck down, then the whole thing should go. That's probably a bold assertion to make, and given the...
So let's go back to Brady. Brady, what is your...
See, I should have known.
For the first time, we asked Brady to basically tell us what he thinks is going to happen. Brady is typically wrong like a weatherman. I think he's on 3 for 20.
Oh, I don't know. I think maybe he's 4 for 20.
4 for 20. It's like he's under the Mendoza line for those that follow baseball. He's not batting 200.
Yeah, but when he does hit it, it's out of the park.
Right, when he does hit it.
He's a power hitter.
Agreed. So, Brady, what are we thinking? What do you think is going to happen on this case? And do you think it will throw out the entire ACA?
Boy, so if you had asked me this question in 2012, what would happen in the Sebelius case, I would have said that it would have been struck down. I would have been wrong then because Chief Justice Roberts upheld it. I think that this lawsuit is going to go nowhere ultimately. I think
so it's a loser. It's symbolic.
I think in the end, I think it's symbolic. I think it's a clever argument. And the complication here is that the Trump administration probably has no intention of defending Obamacare in the courts, or at least they've shown no inclination to do so far. But I do think that you have Chief Justice Roberts and some of the other conservatives may be unwilling to sort of put the nail in the coffin. In fact, they may be thinking that it's kind of doing a good job on its own of heading that way. So I'm not so sure that this will actually end in any other way except having the case be dismissed.
So based on that prediction and based on your record, people should now be planning on the ACA being deemed completely unconstitutional in the next couple of years.
Right, so you better be calling.
All right, well, I guess we're done with this webinar.
Right.
Oh, man.
Well, we'll see how that turns out. But until then,
right.
Happy to turn it back over to Ron.
Assuming Brady's right and we have to take our fate, our destiny into our own hands and really sort of control and ensure that our plans can continue to thrive and be financially viable, even in a world where the ACA continues to be the law of the land, but there is no individual mandate. And I mentioned before, you have to make it attractive. I don't have to spend $10 on a venti mocha, coca, latte, chino with whipped cream, and yet I am spending $10 on that mocha, cocoa, latte, venti, kappa, frappuccino, whatever the heck it is. Why? Because they make it look so darn attractive, right? So what are we going to do with our benefit plan to make it just as attractive? Self-funding is the tool you use to create that attractive plan. Now, that being said, just because you're self-funding, yeah, it's a step in the right direction, but as Adam likes to say, once you enroll in the self-funded school of thought, there are still many levels you need to reach. You start with your base level, move up to the college, and then eventually you're a graduate. And what I mean by that is self-funding, yeah, great. Okay, so now the money's coming from a different source. So what? That's self-funding 101. Then you start to analyze the data, the usage, customize your plan to meet the needs of your specific population. You've taken it to the next level. And then finally, start to look at other innovative tools that are out there, different service providers, different ways of paying for things, methodology, carve-outs, direct contracts. That's when you're a little bit less risk-averse.
We should just call the PhD level a Phia level. Well, that's what we do here. We have that PhD level plan. But to add to what Ron said, about 50% of all plans that we see that are self-funded are in the high school equivalency level. That's what they are.
Certainly.
Typically run by an ASO carrier, right. Very basic network, the look and feel has no different than a fully insured plan.
Nope.
The individual people under the plan don't even know it's self-funded.
They don't know.
They literally they pay a premium. Somebody out there is paying the bill.
That's right.
That's the problem with those self-funded plans, is that it's a good starter, but, after that starting period of a year, you should be moving up to a higher level of self-funding, and hopefully we can talk about that a little bit.
Adam, do you honestly think it's just a coincidence that the highest level of plan is a PhD and the name of your company is PHIA? I mean, you didn't think that was...
I didn't think that, no.
Okay. Well, speaking of the PhD level, let's actually see what you will see when you look at the type of plan. Now, again, we're looking at sort of the end result, right? The cost savings for the individual. As somebody who, I have a family, I see the value in having a health benefit plan. I'm going to be part of this plan, even if it wasn't as wonderful as it is. It's just the icing on the cake, the fact that I've got such a great plan. But for someone like Brady, who we talk about the invincible, the young invincible, Brady, when you look it up in the dictionary, it's his picture that you see. This kid is bulletproof. He's young, he's successful, but he's also bulletproof. He doesn't need a health benefit plan, but he stays enrolled anyway. You can see it's because when he looks at what the cost is versus the benefit, he does the cost-benefit analysis in his mind, and he knows it's a good buy for him.
So go back to the comment made earlier. Our Phia plan is extremely attractive versus the national average for what the employee has to pay. So Brady, when he was deciding where he wants to work, goes, I could pay $146 at Phia, no copay for most things, versus I could pay $224 somewhere else and have a $25 copay.
Not to mention what's covered.
Right. Not to mention what's covered and all the incentives. However, we still have people here, even though there's no copay for generics, no copay for urgent care, I don't want to pay $146.
And it's platinum level, whereas the average people are on bronze plans.
That's the point. So that is a major concern.
They don't know what they're getting for their money.
I think one of the big reasons why you don't see more people dropping the $146 is because they just don't know. They're too busy on Facebook. They're not paying attention. I mean, that's the only reason I could think that a lot of these kids aren't dropping is they don't know they can drop the coverage.
So what does this lead to? Well, not only are we providing the highest level of coverage for the lowest cost, we can do that because the net expense to the plan is so low. So you could look at the fact that we're charging people $100, $146, whereas nationally you get half the coverage for twice the price, and think, well, that's just because Adam is very generous. He's opened his own pockets and he's just subsidizing the cost out of his own pocket. But that's not true. We're able to offer better coverage for less because the plan overall is spending less. Well, how do you do that, you say? Are you guys all like Brady? Are you all young and invincible? No. If you actually were here, you would think we're crazy not for opening our own daycare. The number of and it's wonderful, but the Phia family is growing both literally and figuratively. How is it that we're covering all these benefits, these expenses to the plan, and yet still costing half as much as your traditional employer when you look at what the employer and employee combined are spending?
Well, just to give you a point, based on what Ron just said, I mean, Ron is one of the sicker individuals here at our office.
I'm very sick.
Our actual expense, if we take out Ron's claims, comes down to about $2,800
There you go.
per year instead of the $1,500. Ron,
You're being generous.
Ron is what kills our entire plan. So if there's a way for us to laser Ron off the plan, if we can eliminate Ron from the plan, there could be a bill that we could pass.
I'll look into that.
Laser. Fantastic. Before we go any further, the rest of the stuff that we're going to talk about really talks about how you can take a lot of the initiatives that we put together to lower the overall cost of care in spite of and in light of all the recent changes in the tax law. I would urge all of you to join us at Benefest 2018 on May 3rd. Matt Painton, who put together this entire webinar, is going to make sure when we make the slides available, we will also send the information relating to Benefest in 2018 on May 3rd, because the speaker lineup that we have at Benefest is one that I won't miss. I'm going to be very honest and candid. Most conferences I go to, I do not listen to anyone else's speeches. I don't go to any of the sessions. I basically go from my session to my thing, and as Ron knows, I just get out. I get out of Dodge. This lineup, the brokers that we have, the people that we have, is a can't-miss lineup. If you can be there on that date, I would recommend it, and Matt will make sure that he sends out the information to all of you who have joined us today as attendees. So, with that, what is the 10th spot? These are the do's and don'ts. I'm going to fly through this. If you have any questions, call us. 1, if you don't have access to your claims data, switch administrators, because it's your data. How in the world can you know where your pain points are, what your risks are, where your issues are, if you don't see the claims data to back that information up. You can't. You can't read minds. Know that. One, that will allow you to then put together the right legal team, the right compliance prospects. That will allow you to put together the right plan to match those risks identified through the data. But guess what, folks? Putting all that together means nothing if you don't incentivize your employees to act as consumers. I need Brady and Ron to care. Well, Ron doesn't, but I need Brady to care about the overall cost of the actual care he's getting. Next, stop loss. Choosing the right stop loss partner is vital in the self-funded world. Brokers, if you're on the phone, if you don't choose the right stop loss partner, chances are you'll never self-fund again, which would be horrible. Make sure that you don't just look at the premium, look at the actual policy. They're not that long. Read them. In addition, new gaps. Brady has worked on this tirelessly. 90% of your plan documents have gaps between the plan doc and the employee handbook. 90%, including ours. We had a gap. Why? Ron Peck is writing our plan document. Sean Donnelly, another attorney here, is writing our employee handbook. It's not the same people. And if you're in an ASO environment, you're covering things under the plan that may not be covered under your employee benefit plan, or vice versa. Next, network options. Reference-based pricing is growing. There's murmuring. We hear about it all the time. There are all different types. Full reference-based pricing, no network. Out of network, meaning just the wrapped network claims as being paid on Medicare pricing. Physician-only claims based on a network, hospital claims based on reference-based pricing. If you're in Massachusetts and you think that reference-based pricing isn't here, you're wrong. It's already here. We're already seeing plans installing it throughout the Commonwealth. Specialty carve-outs are growing tremendously, whether it's hemophilia, whether it's dialysis. Next, direct facility contracts. We're seeing that more and more. More individual companies making deals with individual facilities for contracts for their particular employees. And clarifying fiduciary duty. The fiduciary duty, in my opinion, is the next class action lawsuit. The amount of money that is wasted, the amount of fraud, the amount of overpayments that we see in our industry, it makes the 401k world and the Wall Street world look like angels when you see the amount of corruption, fraud, overpayments, deceit, and just pure laziness that we see when it comes to paying health care claims specifically. So as I mentioned before, how do we get Brady incentivized? Really simple. We have no copay for urgent care. We want people to go to urgent care instead of a hospital, if at all possible. We have generic drugs, no copay for generics. Why is that important? If you have a zero copay for generic, trust me, folks, people will look for generic options if at all possible. If a patient finds a mistake on a bill, they get 20% of the savings. So when I hear brokers tell me, well, our people can't get access to the bill, trust me, folks, if your employees knew they can make money if they can find a problem on their hospital bill, they will find the hospital bill and they'll get the hospital bill because it's their own bill. We have yet to have a situation where one of our employees couldn't get a copy of the bill. We actually had one employee get a check for $50,000 because they found over $300,000 in the errors on their son's hospitalization. Last but not least, skin in the game. Why do we have skin in the game? Here's the reason. A nebulizer on the claims on the network, $300. The same nebulizer on Amazon.com with 2-day prime delivery, $118. That employee gets 20% of the $182 they save every single month. Key. Next, maternity. Same thing. Ron and I sat down about 2 years ago and we were like, wow, we have a lot of babies potentially coming.
Well, not us, the company.
Not us, the company.
All right.
We knew a lot of women here were getting married. A lot of men were getting married. So, Brady, what are the two things that happen a year after marriage?
One's a baby.
One's potentially a baby. What's the other thing?
It could be a house.
It could be a divorce.
That was very positive of you.
It's a baby, a divorce, or both.
Or both.
Right. So we said, let's look at the pricing. Folks, just in eastern Massachusetts, where we're located, the price range was different. The same baby comes out. The same ugly child with that weird head, everything. $8,000 to $30,000, depending on where you deliver that child.
Same quality.
Right. So we said, how do we get people to go to the $8,000 facility with the better quality or same quality as a $30,000? We can't make them go there. How do we get them to go? Why don't we offer them diapers and wipes? And that's what we did. Now we're called the diaper men. All across the country we go. We offer our employees up to $300 a month for diapers and wipes. Folks, we had 18 pregnancies. 18 of them went to the $8,000 facility. That saved us roughly $22,000 per treatment. That is major money. Communication. If you are willing to talk to HR about your problems, if you're willing to talk to HR about your surgery before you have the surgery, you get $100. Knock on wood. Brady needs a new hip.
Wow, Brady, what happened?
Brady, yeah.
If Brady walks into our HR and he goes, I need a new hip, and I'm looking at this doctor, our HR will pay him $100, and then we'll tell, okay, Brady, that doctor you have, their facility is a B+ rating at Leapfrog, is $30,000. We have these other facilities that are A rated, $10,000. He doesn't have to go to them, but if he does, Brady gets 20% of the $20,000 he saves in addition to getting a new hip. It's getting the patient to become, getting the employee and the patient to become consumers of actual healthcare, which is the key to this whole damn thing. Next, new era for primary care. Folks, I have this for myself. We will have at Massahu the pioneer of direct primary care here in Massachusetts, a doctor by the name of Jeff Gold. Jeff Gold is amazing. This guy is a rock star. He is not only a great doctor, he's a great friend, and he's a great speaker. The reason he's not my doctor, he's located on the other side of Boston, literally 40 miles away north of the city. It's too far for me. But we've identified a doctor by the name of Dr. Tremblay who has his own direct primary care practice. We pay $70 a month. There's no bill. There's no claims. I go to him once. I go to him 10 times. I have his cell phone. I have his text. If my kids are sick, I text a picture of my kids, pig's eye, whatever they call it now. You have a rash on your arm. You take a picture of it, send it to them. It's not telemedicine. Telemedicine, you have no idea who you're talking to. This is your own primary doctor. And the reason why it's an innovative approach is that when he refers you to get an MRI, unlike the doctor of Brigham and Women's, who's referring you to their own MRI facility, which is costing you $5,000, Dr. Tremblay is referring you to an independent Shields MRI, which is $800 for the same machine. That's the difference. It's not only his visit, it's where he actually refers you. Where's the savings there as well? Huge thing we're noticing growing across the country. We think it's amazing. We think it's an opportunity that more and more people are looking at. And for that gentleman who brought up the fact of the benefits being a differentiator, how about this? When I go up to a prospect who has the opportunity to work with someone across the street, I can say, hey, guess what? We here at Phia, you have your own doctor. We pay for it. There is no copay. There is no bill. You want to go visit your doctor? Stop by his office on your way to work. He'll see you. You're not calling, setting up an appointment 2 weeks later. You're seeing him that morning, that day, via teleconference, going to his office, whatever it might be. Big change, big differentiator for the future, and we're seeing it grow and grow and grow. Please follow us on LinkedIn. We need 3,000 followers. We have Matt Painton, who is our marketing, communications director, social media. I don't know what to call the guy. If it relates to marketing and it's not a brick and mortar building, it's Matt. Matt will lose his job if we don't have 3,000 followers by the end of March. Hashtag save Matt's job. Please go on the Phia group on LinkedIn and follow us. So far we've added about 50 people in the 4 days we've had this.
Not many people care about your job.
Not many people care about Matt's job.
Maybe they're hoping to pick him up.
We got 30 days. Yeah, maybe they're trying to steal from us.
That's it.
That might be the concern. But we're concerned, obviously, about that. And lastly, we want to bring up the fact that we've been named the 2017 top-ranked healthcare webinar for the year. We're very excited about it. We hope to get this in 2018. And again, we want to thank the fine folks at Massahu for allowing us to put on this presentation to their unique guests and their unique members. Again, don't forget to come to Benefest on May 3rd. Feel free to reach out to us for information on this. Ron, you want to share something?
Yeah, there's no individual mandate that you come to the event, but we've made it so attractive, you'd be a fool to miss it.
On behalf of Brady, Ron, and myself, thank you so much for joining us today on our webinar, and we hope you continue following the Phia group and Massahu, and thank you and have a great rest of your week.